The council chamber of the Galactic Empire was a cavernous hall of shimmering obsidian, its grandeur overshadowed by the tension crackling in the air. General Kranthus, his imposing form clad in the battle-worn armor of his kind, stood at its center. His voice, gravelly and laced with urgency, echoed across the chamber. I have faced countless adversaries, crushed insurgents, and quelled uprisings. But what I encountered on the fringes of Sector 93 defies all reason. He paused, his golden eyes scanning the disbelieving faces of the council. Humans, do not fight them. To provoke them is to invite chaos itself. The murmurs began, a wave of disbelief and suppressed laughter. Kranthus's mandibles twitched in irritation, but he pressed on. One of their ships, a rusting, patchwork construct barely held together, approached our scout fleet. We engaged standard protocols. But as we prepared to establish communication, they salvaged our fuel pods. Salvaged? Admiral Zalvik, a tall and sleek member of the council, interrupted, his voice dripping with condescension. Do you mean to suggest these primitives stripped your fleet of resources in the middle of a diplomatic encounter? Yes, Kranthus growled. They claimed it was a rescue mission. In doing so, they caused a chain reaction that obliterated 3 of our cruisers. Their pilot then transmitted an image, a smiling primate offering a thumbs up, and flew away. The room erupted in laughter. Zalvik leaned forward, a smirk on his angular face. General, it sounds to me like you were bested by a troop of scavengers with more luck than skill. Perhaps it is not humanity we should fear, but your capacity to assess threats. The laughter grew louder, a chorus of mockery that clawed at Kranthus's pride. He slammed his clawed hand against the podium, silencing the room. Dismiss me if you will, but I assure you, this species is unlike any we have encountered. They defy logic. Their technology is primitive, yet their unpredictability makes them dangerous. They thrive in chaos, a chaos they wield as a weapon. Zalvik waved dismissively. A compelling story, General, but the Council will not cower before a backwater planet of hairless apes. He stood, turning to address the assembly. I propose we demonstrate the might of the Galactic Empire by bringing Earth to its knees. A swift conquest will ensure no such accidents occur again. The Council roared their approval. Kranthus's heart sank as the decision was finalized. He stepped down, his claws clenched in frustration. Far away on Earth, the sun rose over bustling cities and tranquil suburbs, where humanity remained blissfully unaware of the Empire's plans. Aboard the USS Fortitude, humanity's defense fleet floated lazily in orbit. Captain Joe Riggs leaned back in his chair, a coffee mug precariously balanced on the console beside him. His crew, a ragtag bunch of undertrained and underpaid officers, lounged about. Captain, said Ensign Morales, squinting at a monitor. We're picking up a signal that's weird. Like really weird. Riggs sipped his coffee. Defined weird. Is it like alien invasion weird, or more like that time Jenkins fried the toaster weird? Kind of both? Morales tapped a button, and a garbled transmission filled the bridge. Riggs frowned, then grinned. Oh, it's probably one of those online pranks. You know, like when they hacked our comms to play cat videos on a loop. Morales hesitated. Sir, this one's different. It's a demand for unconditional surrender. Riggs snorted. Well, that's new. Did Jenkins put you up to this? No, Captain. This is legit. Well, whoever they are, tell them we don't negotiate without pizza. Preferably with extra pepperoni. On board the Imperial flagship, Admiral Zalvik stared at his comm officer in disbelief. What did they say? They requested pizza, sir. The officer replied, struggling to maintain a straight face. Zalvik's face twisted in fury. This is an insult. Prepare the fleet. We will make an example of them. Back on Earth, Riggs was oblivious to the impending storm. Meanwhile, in a cloaked ship at the edge of the solar system, Kranthus watched the unfolding events with a mix of horror and resignation. "They're going to die. All of them," he muttered to himself, his claws drumming on the console. He activated his ship's engines, his mind racing. He had to intervene. For all their flaws, these humans had a spark, an inexplicable brilliance masked by their reckless absurdity. And as much as it baffled him, he couldn't stand by and watch them be annihilated. "Why am I doing this?" he grumbled as the ship hurtled toward Earth. "They're chaos incarnate, a danger to themselves and everyone else." But, he sighed, slumping into his chair, "they're oddly endearing. Like a wild animal you can't help but root for." He steeled himself. If he couldn't stop the Empire from making a catastrophic mistake, he'd have to help the humans survive the storm they didn't even know was coming. A fleet of sleek, imposing Imperial warships emerged from hyperspace, casting long shadows over Earth. Admiral Zalvik stood on the command deck of his flagship, surveying the blue-green planet below with disdain. "Open a channel to the primitives," he commanded, his voice cold and imperious. The communications officer complied, and moments later, a grainy video feed from a human relay station flickered on. A disheveled technician, mid-bite of a sandwich, squinted at the screen. "This is Earth, who's calling?" the man mumbled, crumbs falling onto his console. "This is Admiral Zalvik of the Galactic Empire," the admiral declared. "Your planet is hereby annexed. Surrender unconditionally, or face the consequences." The technician paused, then tilted his head. "Right. Is this one of those viral marketing stunts? Because if it is, you really nailed the whole evil overlord thing." Zalvik's nostrils flared. "This is not a joke. Prepare to submit, or prepare for annihilation." "Hold on," the technician said, typing on his keyboard. "We don't really have a surrender process, but I can get you the Wi-Fi password if that helps." "Wi-Fi? What is?" Zalvik stopped, glaring at his crew. "Cut the transmission. Deploy the fleet." As the first wave of Imperial ships descended, humanity's response was underwhelming. On board the USS Fortitude, Captain Joe Riggs stared at the incoming ships on his radar with mild confusion. "Are those UFOs?" he asked, pointing at the screen. "Looks like it," Ensign Morales confirmed. "Well, that's not good." Riggs sipped his coffee. "What's the playbook for alien invasions?" Morales shrugged. "Run?" Before Riggs could reply, a rumble shook the station. Somewhere in orbit, an old, malfunctioning defense satellite sputtered to life. Years of neglect had left its targeting system erratic at best, but it managed to lock onto one of the Empire's frigates. A single missile launched, its trajectory wobbly, yet strangely precise. Zalvik barely had time to react before a bright explosion filled his view screen. "Report," he barked, gripping the edge of his command chair. "A missile from their orbital debris, sir." "One of our frigates is down." Zalvik's fists clenched. "Launch unoffensive. Destroy them all." Back on the Fortitude, Riggs watched as the alien fleet moved into formation. "All right, people," he said, standing. "It's game time. Morales, fire up the junkyard maneuver." "The what?" Morales blinked. Toss all the space junk in their way. Create confusion, chaos, maybe a few crashes. That's not a real tactic." "It is now," Riggs grinned. The human fleet, if it could be called that, scrambled into action. A handful of outdated ships, their paint peeling and engines sputtering, launched from orbiting stations. Pilots and crew members, most of whom had never seen combat, followed Riggs's orders with varying levels of enthusiasm and terror. Human engineers began remotely shoving derelict satellites and debris into the path of the advancing Imperial ships. What looked like sheer desperation had an unexpected effect. Imperial vessels, programmed to avoid collisions, swerved erratically, disrupting their formations. "Sir, they're deploying trash," an Imperial officer reported, visibly baffled. "Trash? Is this some kind of primitive weapon?" Zalvik's eyes narrowed. "Push through it." Their insolence will cost them dearly. But the chaos only escalated. One human pilot, panicking, accidentally fired a missile in reverse, hitting a discarded asteroid. The resulting explosion sent a hail of shrapnel cascading through space, disabling 2 more Imperial ships. On board his flagship, Zalvik seethed. How is this happening? They're disorganized. They're amateurs. On the Fortitude, Riggs leaned back, pleased with himself. See? The junkyard maneuver works every time. It's literally the first time we've done this, Morales muttered. Details, Ensign. Let's move on to Operation Disco Ball. Operation what? Riggs pointed to a reflective satellite. We spin that baby up, aim it at their fleet, and let the sunlight do the rest. Morales hesitated. That's insane. Thank you, Riggs said, grinning. Minutes later, the satellite's mirrored surface began rotating rapidly, reflecting intense beams of sunlight directly into the Imperial fleet. Disoriented pilots struggled to regain control, and a few smaller ships collided in the confusion. On board his cloaked vessel, Kranthus watched the battle unfold. His mandibles clicked in disbelief as the humans' improvised tactics wreaked havoc on the Empire's supposedly invincible fleet. This is madness, he muttered, his claws tapping against the console. How are they not extinct? The battle raged on, a bizarre mix of human ingenuity and sheer dumb luck. By the time the Imperial fleet retreated, several of their largest ships had been destroyed, not by coordinated attacks, but by a series of improbable accidents and chaotic maneuvers. On the bridge of his flagship, Zalvik fumed. Sabotage. It must be sabotage. There's no way these primitives could do this on their own. His officers exchanged nervous glances, but said nothing. The fleet limped back toward hyperspace, leaving Earth untouched. Kranthus, still cloaked and observing, shook his head. This cannot continue. If the Empire doesn't destroy them, their own recklessness will. He activated his ship's engines, setting a course for Earth. For the sake of the galaxy, he muttered, I need to help these lunatics before they accidentally conquer the stars. A sleek, alien ship descended into a quiet field on the outskirts of a small Earth town, its arrival marked by a glowing ramp extending to the ground. Kranthus stepped out, his towering form imposing in the dim light. He scanned his surroundings, only to be greeted by a lone human figure ambling toward him with a cup of coffee in hand. Captain Joe Riggs squinted at the alien, clearly unimpressed. Nice costume, buddy. What's this, some kind of guerrilla marketing thing? Comic-Con isn't for another 3 months. Kranthus tilted his head, unsure if he should be offended. I am General Kranthus of the Galactic Empire, and I have come to offer an alliance to save your species from annihilation. Riggs took a sip of his coffee. Right. So, you're not here for the costume contest. Kranthus groaned, pinching the bridge of his nose. This was going to be harder than he thought. After several minutes of awkward explanations, Riggs finally seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation, or at least part of it. So, you're saying the Empire's gonna come back for round 2, and we're not ready? Riggs asked. Correct, Kranthus replied. But with my expertise and your unique approach to combat, we may stand a chance. Riggs grinned. All right, General. Welcome to Earth. Let's save the world, or at least make a good show of it. Kranthus quickly discovered that working with humans was a test of patience. During their first brainstorming session, Riggs assembled a group of Earth's finest minds, which turned out to be a mix of underqualified military personnel and enthusiastic volunteers. All right, people, Riggs began, clapping his hands. The general here says we need to prep for an intergalactic smackdown. Ideas? A young engineer raised his hand. What if we strap fireworks to asteroids? You know, like, send them in as decoys? Kranthus blinked. Fireworks? Yeah. Bright lights, loud noises. It could confuse their targeting systems. The room erupted in enthusiastic murmurs. Kranthus opened his mouth to object, then closed it. It was absurd, but given what he'd witnessed so far, he couldn't entirely dismiss it. Another hand shot up. We could train a bunch of pigeons to carry EMP devices. Riggs beamed. See, that's the kind of outside-the-box thinking we need. Kranthus sighed, muttering under his breath. This is what I get for trying to save a species fueled by caffeine and chaos. Despite the ridiculous suggestions, Kranthus managed to steer the humans toward a more practical plan, albeit one that still bordered on insanity. Over the following weeks, he worked tirelessly to train Earth's defenses, combining his military expertise with humanity's bizarre ingenuity. During the first war game simulation, Kranthus introduced a set of strict tactical drills. The humans, however, had other ideas. "All right, team," Riggs said, grinning mischievously. "New strategy. Crank up the tunes." The humans blasted a playlist of loud, upbeat pop music across the battlefield. The simulated alien troops, controlled by Kranthus' advanced algorithms, hesitated, their sensors overwhelmed by the cacophony. What are you doing?" Kranthus asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Distracting the enemy," Riggs replied. "Works every time." To Kranthus' shock, the tactic worked. The humans exploited the confusion to secure a decisive victory. He stared at the results in silence, his claws twitching. "You're welcome," Riggs said with a wink. Despite his exasperation, Kranthus couldn't deny the results. Humanity's ability to turn absurd ideas into effective tactics was nothing short of miraculous. He adapted his training to leverage their strengths, focusing on flexibility and improvisation rather than rigid strategy. As the days passed, Kranthus found himself growing fond of these chaotic creatures. Their resilience, creativity, and relentless optimism were infectious. He even began to enjoy their antics, though he'd never admit it aloud. One evening, as the training wound down, Riggs approached Kranthus, holding out a steaming cup of coffee. "For you, General. It's an Earth tradition, sharing a cup of joe with your allies." Kranthus hesitated, then accepted the cup. He took a cautious sip, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "It's bitter," he said. "Yeah, but it grows on you," Riggs replied with a grin. "Kind of like us, huh?" Kranthus chuckled, a rare sound that surprised even himself. "Yes, Captain. You humans are growing on me." For the first time, Kranthus allowed himself to hope. If anyone could defy the odds and stand against the might of the Galactic Empire, it was these strange, unpredictable beings. And he would stand with them come what may. The Galactic Empire's fleet emerged from hyperspace with an awe-inspiring display of power. Hundreds of ships, bristling with advanced weaponry, spread out in precise formation. This time, there would be no mistakes, no mercy. Admiral Zalvik, standing tall on the bridge of his flagship, gazed at Earth with a predatory smirk. "This time we will crush them," he declared. "No more games. Deploy all forces." Across Earth's orbit, humanity's ragtag defense forces scrambled into position. The scene was chaotic as ever, with mismatched ships struggling to hold formation and last-minute duct tape repairs being applied to critical systems. "All right, team," Captain Riggs said, his voice crackling through the comms. "Remember the plan." He paused. "Actually, forget the plan. Just don't crash into each other and aim for the big shiny ones." On the ground, Kranthus monitored the unfolding battle from a human command center. He grimaced as the humans' strategy unfolded in real time. "Is it too late to surrender?" he muttered under his breath. The Imperial fleet opened fire, their weapons cutting through space with precision. Human ships darted erratically, their evasive maneuvers looking more like panicked flailing than calculated tactics. "Deploy the reflective satellites," Riggs shouted. The order set off a chain reaction of chaos. Several jury-rigged satellites were launched into orbit, their surfaces polished to a mirror sheen. As they spun, they reflected intense beams of sunlight directly into the Empire's fleet, temporarily blinding their targeting systems. On board his flagship, Zalvik roared in frustration. "What is this trickery?" "Sir, it appears they're using reflective surfaces to disrupt our sensors," an officer reported. "Reflective surfaces? Are we fighting children? Destroy them all." But the humans weren't done. As the Imperial ships recalibrated, a small Earth vessel, patched together with scrap metal and duct tape, accidentally misfired its engine. The resulting explosion sent debris spiraling into space. The debris collided with a fuel depot on an Imperial cruiser, causing a chain reaction that engulfed an entire squadron in flames. On the human side, cheers erupted. "Totally planned that," Riggs said with a wink, though his crew looked less than convinced. Kranthus pinched the bridge of his nose. "This isn't a strategy. This is chaos weaponized." The humans didn't stop there. Utilizing Kranthus's borrowed knowledge of the Empire's communication systems, they hacked into the fleet's primary network. "Broadcasting now, sir," one human technician said. Seconds later, every Imperial ship's communication screens lit up, not with warnings or strategic commands, but with an endless loop of cat videos. Felines of all sizes batted at string, climbed into boxes, and performed inexplicably captivating stunts. "Admiral," an officer stammered, "our crew is distracted." Zalvik turned to see half his bridge staff mesmerized by a video of a cat chasing a laser pointer. His fury boiled over. "Turn that off. Focus on the battle." On the ground, Kranthus watched the chaos unfold and made a decision. He couldn't let these idiots succeed by accident. If humanity was going to survive, they needed one decisive move. "I'm taking my ship," he told Riggs. "Whoa, hold on there, big guy. You sure about this?" "I've made peace with my fate, which is more than I can say for your species." Kranthus boarded his ship and launched into orbit. Cloaked and agile, the vessel darted through the chaos, weaving between Imperial and human forces. His target, the Empire's flagship. As he approached, Kranthus calculated his final maneuver. A collision at this angle, with his ship's payload, would cripple the flagship's command systems. "This is madness," he muttered. "And yet fitting." Inside the flagship, Zalvik barked orders, oblivious to the incoming threat. Kranthus's ship decloaked at the last second, ramming into the flagship's core. A massive explosion rocked the Imperial vessel, sending shockwaves through the fleet. In his final moments, Kranthus couldn't help but think, "I can't believe I'm dying for these lunatics." The Imperial fleet, now leaderless and in disarray, began retreating. Panic spread as smaller ships fled, their morale shattered. On Earth, the humans cheered, blissfully unaware of how close they had come to utter annihilation. "Mission accomplished," Riggs shouted, raising a mug of coffee. From the wreckage of Kranthus's ship, a beacon transmitted one last message to Earth. It was a simple directive, recorded in his calm, gravelly voice. "Try not to blow yourselves up before the next battle." Humanity celebrated their victory with parties, parades, and an unprecedented spike in cat video uploads. Meanwhile, in the far reaches of the galaxy, news of the Empire's humiliating defeat at the hands of Earth spread like wildfire. For now, humanity was safe, their chaotic brilliance having triumphed against impossible odds. And somewhere in the stars, Kranthus's legacy endured, an alliance forged in absurdity, but one that would change the galaxy forever. In the aftermath of the battle, Kranthus sat in a hastily repaired Earth command center, nursing a cup of the humans' bitter drink they called coffee. Against all odds and logic, they had won. As he composed his report to the Empire, his mandibles clicked with frustration. To the esteemed Imperial Council, he began, typing furiously. "I must reiterate my previous warnings with the utmost urgency. Do not fight the humans." Again, he paused, reflecting on the chaos he'd witnessed before continuing. "They are not warriors in any traditional sense. They possessed no discipline, no coordination, and certainly no respect for the natural order of warfare. Yet, through a combination of sheer audacity, improbable luck, and an unrelenting penchant for absurdity. They have rendered your most formidable fleet a laughingstock." Cranthus leaned back, shaking his head. He added, "If their greatest weapon is chaos, their greatest strategy is unintentional genius. In short, they are the galaxy's most dangerous imbeciles." He hesitated before adding a postscript. P.S. Do not approach them under any circumstances. They may appear friendly, but they will find a way to turn your own arrogance against you. Meanwhile, Earth was in uproarious celebration. News outlets declared Captain Joe Riggs a global hero. Riggs, true to form, gave a speech in his usual bumbling manner. "Look, folks, I'm just a guy with a dream. A dream that if you throw enough spaghetti at the wall, some of it's gonna stick. And boy, did it stick," he said, raising a toast to a crowd that didn't seem to notice or care that his dream was more accidental than intentional. Behind the scenes, Earth's leaders squabbled over the victory spoils. Politicians debated who deserved credit for saving humanity, with some even claiming the victory as proof of divine intervention. "It was our superior diplomacy," one leader insisted. "Clearly, it was our innovative use of technology," countered another, referencing the hacked cat video broadcast. Cranthus, observing from the sidelines, pinched the bridge of his nose. "They're congratulating themselves for blind luck," he muttered. Far from Earth, the Galactic Empire was in chaos of its own. The humiliating loss fractured the Imperial Council, with various factions blaming Admiral Zalvik for the defeat. Zalvik himself had been arrested upon his return, shouting about sabotage and incomprehensible feline propaganda during his trial. Across the galaxy, rumors spread like wildfire. Whispers of humanity's unstoppable superweapon reached the farthest corners of space. Some spoke of Earth as a backwater planet capable of conjuring destruction from the void itself. Fearful alien civilizations began to view humans as mythical beings who thrived on chaos and destruction. Cranthus watched this unfold with a mix of disbelief and resignation. His decision to stay on Earth wasn't born of loyalty, but of necessity. "If I leave them unchecked," he reasoned, "they'll destroy themselves or worse, the galaxy." As Earth's new, unofficial advisor, Cranthus worked tirelessly to instill some semblance of order into their preparations for future conflicts. But humans, as always, resisted structure at every turn. One evening, Riggs approached him with a smug grin. "So, General, what's next? Think the Empire's dumb enough to try again?" "They'd be suicidal to do so," Cranthus replied. He took a sip of his coffee and sighed. "But there are plenty of other species in the galaxy. And now that you've gained a reputation as galactic legends, someone is bound to challenge you." Right on cue, alarms blared throughout the command center. A young officer burst into the room, wide-eyed. "Sir, we've picked up a transmission from the Chlorathian hive. They've declared war on humanity." Riggs laughed, clapping Cranthus on the back. "Looks like round 2, General. Ready to save the day again?" Cranthus closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. "Not again," he muttered, as the humans scrambled into action, concocting yet another harebrained plan. Cranthus resigned himself to his fate. He would stay, not because he believed in their cause, but because someone had to keep these lunatics from blowing up the galaxy. For now, at least, chaos reigned supreme, and Cranthus was starting to suspect it always would.